أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد. My dear beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, a couple of days ago at work, I was meeting with a client, and they described to me an incident that took place at one of the public schools, one of the local high schools, one of the high schools around here that we all know very well. And they described to me a fight taking place in which a Muslim girl had her hijab pulled off. And this reminded me, here we are a few weeks into the school year, and like every year for many of us, we just follow the norms that are around us. All the people putting their kids in public schools, so here we are, we put our kids in public schools. But little do we know that what we are speaking about is our children. Our children. These innocent souls. These blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in which He entrusted us with. You have this from day one, little infant, toddler, child, and it's in your care, your responsibility, a great amana that it is. Do we recognize the magnitude of this amana? Many of us, in order to live a life that we want, a life that we think is special, we sacrifice our children the same way on Eid al-Adha. We go slaughter sheep and goats. Exactly the same way. You sacrifice your child as if he is nothing, she is nothing. And this is all for what? So we have a little nicer car, maybe 2 cars or 3 cars. We do this so we have a nicer house. I was watching a video earlier this week about an NBA player who retired when he was 32 years old. And the interviewer is asking him, when you retired, what was your career earnings? What was your wealth? And he said, over $100 million. And he said, after you retired, what did you do? He said, I was miserable. For years, he was miserable. We are so fooled to think that millions of dollars is what we really need, or what's really of value, or what will really make us happy or truly enhance our life. It's a huge deception. Many of millionaires, if not billionaires, money has done little for them except give them some entertainment that they get used to and they get bored of. And then what? And many of us, we live our life endlessly chasing this idea. And in the course of doing so, we sacrifice our children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, ku anfusakum wa ahlikum nara, وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ. O you who believe, O you who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, O you who believe in the last day, O you who believe in a day of accountability, O you who believe in a Jannah and in a Nar, a paradise and a hellfire, O you who believe in the prophets and in our beloved Prophet Mohammed sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, O you who believe in the angels, O you who believe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands and He speaks to you, Ku anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Protect yourselves. Protect yourselves and your families from a hellfire. وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ. The fuel of which is stones and people. We all, without a doubt, have heard this verse. How is it that we understand it? How many of us open the books of tafsir to see what the scholars have said? In order to understand the verse correctly, we go back to the Salaf. We go back to the understanding of our pious predecessors. How is it that they understood such a verse? Ibn Jarir, may Allah be pleased with him, narrated on Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu regarding the meaning of this verse, regarding the meaning of protect yourselves and your children. And he said, it is to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to fear disobeying Him, and to command yourselves and to command your families with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded, and to avoid what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited. This is the protection from the hellfire. This is the wiqaya that we are speaking of. Ali Ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu, he said regarding this verse, he said, teach yourselves and teach your families kullu khayr, all goodness, and discipline them on it. وَأَدِّبُوهُمْ. This is the responsibility on our shoulders as leaders of households, as leaders of families. You will be questioned. You would be questioned. Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ سَائِلٌ كُلُّ رَاعٍ عَمَّا اسْتَرْعَاهُ حَفِظَ ذَلِكَ أَوْ ضَيَّعَهُ. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask every leader, every shepherd regarding what is under his care, what he has been entrusted with, whether he preserved it, whether he protected it, or neglected it. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, كَفَى بِالْمَرْءِ إِثْمًا أَن يُضَيَّعَ مَنْ يَعُولُ. كَفَى بِالْمَرْءِ إِثْمًا أَن يُضَيَّعَ مَنْ يَعُولُ. It's enough of a sin. It's enough of a sin that you neglect and you abandon those entrusted in your care. When we send off our children to school, When we think of preparing and protecting them, we think about school supplies, we think about materials and clothing, we think about their lunch and their snacks, and so on and so forth. Little are we thinking about what is the environment that I'm sending my child off to. What is the environment that I'm exposing this child off to? This is the responsibility. Are you going to throw your child in a place to be destroyed, to be corrupted? Look at how much time your son or daughter, even you yourself, are spending in a school on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a yearly basis. It's a tremendous amount of time. And it's important. I have a few important points today. And as we promise always to be frank, always to be truthful. For me to come up here on the minbar is an amana. We're not up here to fool ourselves, but to speak the truth, to bring awareness to the reality of what is happening around us. The schools that we send our children to, and specifically I'm talking about the public schools, are from the most corrupt environments that you could send your child to. The amount of corruption, the amount of munkar and fasad, immorality and indecency that is taking place in these schools is hard to comprehend or even realize. And many who did not grow up here or did not attend public schools may not even realize it. And those who grew up here and attended public schools, your children and your families are encountering greater challenges and adversity than you ever did. And I, for one, grew up here and attended public schools. And I recall always saying to myself, the period of junior high and high school was amongst the greatest fitna I encountered in my life. And we casually throw our children into these environments. Who's controlling the school system? Who's driving the curriculum and what is being taught in schools? Don't think that schools is about math and science and that's it. Schools, they're teaching atheism and secularism. They're teaching our children, you don't need to follow a religion. You are free, do what you want to do. Take your time and explore. They're teaching our children what is important. They're teaching our children how to understand life, how to take on the liberal world view. They're teaching our children that homosexuality, LGBTQ, 1, 2, 3, whatever, that it is normal. It's okay. They'll pull out books, mom and dad and dad and dad, and for very young children. Don't put your head in the sand. They're teaching the children about gender identity. And you're a male and you're a female, but you're a female, you feel like a male. It's okay, Habibi, be a male, be a boy, pick your gender you want to be. This is a few things that are being taught in the schools. They're teaching them dating, it's okay, it's normal. Friend boys, friend girls, normal. They're even teaching them and introduce to them very young age about sexual protection and having experiences and doing this and this and that. This is what's happening in the schools. Let alone the school environment is a great form of population control. You have tens of hundreds of students being taught to be submissive to the system, being taught to be orderly citizens. So they grow up one day to never question anything. to be those who fall in line. Look up the history of the school system, how it originated, where it came from, ideologically, what it's all about. We need to be thoughtful. What is it that we're doing? Don't think your children will go to the school and not be impacted and not be influenced. Nothing will affect them. That somehow they'll be in a place of great fitna, but none of it will have an influence on them. A message for many to consider, and I would strongly suggest it, and if you're not able, and as you all know, we have a shortage of Islamic schools, and our masjid here is striving with your support and the community support to add to what already exists, Islamic schools, to provide a safe environment for our children. If you're not able to attend an Islamic school, then you need to consider homeschooling. There are even today shuyukh in the West. You might be surprised to hear this, but shuyukh in the West that are now giving fatwas that sending your child to a public school is haram. You are sending them to a place of munkar. You are sending them to a place of fitna. You are sending them to a place where they could be lost. How many stories have we seen of a Muslim girl running off with a non-Muslim boy, thinking she's in love? How many stories of young Muslims that are growing up in these environments and questioning their religion? It's not a joke. It's not something that is happening to just a few people. These are widespread problems. We have our Muslim youth and children go to school all week. At school, they're not learning anything about Islam. Many of them do not attend Salat al-Jum'ah, not attend Friday prayer. Where is their exposure to Islam? Maybe at home they're learning a few things. Many families do not exhaust the effort required to teach their kids the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or bring them to the masjid, or bring them to halaqat. Where are these children learning their deen? We have children growing up, not only thinking learning Islam is not important, they're growing up to think that it's not even under consideration. Because there's no exposure. For each one of us has this responsibility. Think about it. What is it you're doing with your family? What is it you're doing with your children? Many of us will say, I have no choice. And sadly, many will ultimately put their children in the public school one way or another. They're not willing to make the sacrifices. Yes, homeschooling your children is a sacrifice. But if you have the will and you have the way, you will find the way. If you have the will, you will find the way. Talk to people who are homeschooling if you're considering. See what is it that they do. Find homeschooling programs. Do your research, put your effort. Be responsible in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't listen to all the myths. Homeschooling does this and homeschooling does that. In fact, in many cases, schooling destroys ambition, destroys the confidence of many students. They expose to many corrupt ideas. Homeschooling can work very well and cooperate with others who are homeschooling. Many homeschooling programs work along this way. But if you are going to send your children to school, then the responsibility upon you is great. To monitor, to supervise, to teach. When your children are going to school each day, you are preparing them. You are giving them the boost of how to navigate the school. as best as they can. The miskeen is going to be under great challenge and difficulty. And when they come from school, you need to talk, follow up. What ideas have they heard? What things have they been told? You are in combat with what they are dealing with. And it's upon every one of us, the duty of every mother and father, to ensure that their son and daughter are learning the fundamentals of Islam. You need to make sure this is your great responsibility, to ensure that your children are learning the matters of the deen, the matters of iman and aqeedah, the matters of the seerah and the fiqh, the matters that they need to be a Muslim. Otherwise, the identity is lost. Otherwise, they grow up assimilated. You can't distinguish the Muslim from the non-Muslim. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from this. أقول ما تسمعون واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. The teaching of the children, the deen, is your responsibility. Ensure that it is happening consistently. If you can, on a daily basis, even 20-30 minutes of a lesson, of an Islamic lesson, of a lecture that you listen to online, of a series that you're following, of a book that you are reading. This consistency produces something. A lesson, a halaqah that you enroll and attend in the masjid. Come approach us if you're looking for halaqat for your children or for the youth to learn. Put your effort. Don't put your head in the sand and ignore the matter. This is your responsibility. It's not only your responsibility to feed and pay the bills, but to raise an upright Muslim who, by the will of Allah, would be admitted to Jannah and not to the hellfire. A'yadhan billah. You have to be a disciplinary. Many times your kid will say, I'm bored. I don't feel like it. I'm busy. You want to bring him to the masjid, he doesn't feel like it. You want to take him to the class, he's not motivated. Recognize that they will get used to it. Teach them to love the masjid. Teach them to love the lessons of learning and seeking knowledge and the suhbah salihah. If they're not used to it, the transition might be a little challenging, but shay'an fa shay'an they will get used to it. Don't lose sight of the fact that you are the parent. The little child doesn't know better. A 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, he's learning. It needs to be driven by the parent. You yourself have to have the discipline to pass it along to them. Then they develop patience to sit in a class. And they develop the patience to stand in salah and enjoy to come to the masjid. But it takes effort. It takes sacrifice. Many parents are soft. He doesn't want to come to the masjid. He wants to play the game. He's bored. Ya akhi, you're the parent. You have the intelligence. You have the understanding. Recognize your responsibility to drive your children towards what is good. To learn to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Put them in the right environments. And teach them how to be cautious in the challenging environments. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our children and to raise them to be righteous offspring. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وعافنا واعف عنا اللهم اهدنا واهد بنا واجعلنا هداة المهديين اللهم ادخلنا الجنة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين وأذل الشرك والمشركين اللهم انصر إخواننا المستضعفين في غزة اللهم كن لهم عونا ونصيرا اللهم انصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم اللهم ادخلنا الجنة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصل اللهم على محمد وعلى آل محمد وأقم الصلاة.